Hi, this is Kathleen Reardon. I am the CEO of the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits, and I am very pleased to welcome you all here today for this webinar with Senator Shaheen's staff about submitting congressional directed spending requests in FY25. We're fortunate in New Hampshire to have a strong U.S. Senator, Senator Shaheen, and her office is very proactive in helping understand community needs and assist nonprofit leaders in this process, which is a very important way for us to get funding for critical projects. So I am just got a couple of housekeeping items before I turn things over. First of all, this session, as you have heard, is being recorded. We'll send out the recording as well as the slides following this webinar feature. We will have an opportunity for Q&A at the end, but we certainly encourage you to ask your questions as we're going through, and I'll be watching them. I do ask you to use the question and answer feature rather than the chat so that we can easily address them. There are several staff from Senator Shaheen's office that are on the webinar, and so they'll be answering some questions as they go, but we will again have time at the end for questions. So without further ado, I would like to hand things over to Senator Shaheen's State Director, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kathleen. We are thrilled to be back here again with our friends in the nonprofit community to talk a little bit more about the FY25 Congressionally Directed Spending process. I'm joined by a number of colleagues, Ted Trippi, Tina Kasim, John Jarvis, Erica Anhalt, Sujin Kim, and James On. Between all of us, hopefully we can answer all your questions at the end. But I will turn it over to Ted Trippi, who will walk us through the process. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone. Again, welcome to as we kick off our FY25 CDS process. I first wanted to address the FY24 process, which many folks that are on this call may be interested in because you may have received notification from us that you were selected for funding by the Senate. And that process is moving forward. In recent weeks, we've gained a lot of optimism as to reaching a resolution and finally passing FY24 omnibus legislation, in which we anticipate all of our CDS projects that were funded by the Senate to be included. So please keep a close eye on your email, and of course we will reach out to you through the email and through phone to alert you as we reach a resolution for FY24. But I wanted to sort of set that straight from the outset. So to begin, I want to go over what exactly is congressionally directed spending. In sort of layman's terms, it's a place-based short-term funding available for projects in local communities. It's applicable under certain eligible accounts, and it's subject to general federal regulations related to these accounts that include audit and transparency measures. Using earmarks, Congress can make investments through a number of different issue spaces: education improvement, distance learning, agricultural research, conservation, health improvements, criminal justice, quite a wide array of different activities that can be supported through this process. I wanted to go over some of the differences between the House and the Senate. These numbers here are going to likely change. Right now we are working off FY24 guidance, and we might see some changes on the House side or on the Senate side in terms of the number of accounts being offered, or maybe some differences in how the guidance that's provided for each of those accounts. So, but I just really wanted to highlight that there are differences between the House in terms of the number of accounts, and there are other differences, including requiring proof of support. In the House, they require letters of support. In the Senate, that is not required. However, for our office, we do require 2 letters of support from third parties in the community, basically to demonstrate to the office, to the senator, that there is community support for the project being proposed. So for our side on the Senate, certain committees will require us to prioritize our CDS requests. And importantly, there's a limit on the House side to the number of requests that the member themselves can submit to the committee for consideration for funding. So in FY24, that number was 15 projects on the House side. On the Senate side, we have no such limit. Ultimately, the limit is determined by the funding allocated to the senator for each account. And then hard copy for member certification. That's just simply a certification that the senator sends in to certify that she has no pecuniary interest in these projects. Wanted to talk about some results that we've had through the through FY22 and FY23. Over $180 million awarded across 183 CDS projects through those two cycles. And FY24, assuming that we are able to get that across the finish line, we're talking another 96 projects and 100 million, just a little over $100 million. You can see some pictures here when of course, when we successfully secure funding for these projects and when they start being implemented. We love to schedule the senator to get out and tour the project and discuss all the great work that's being done as a result of that funding. So certainly, if you are successful in this process, we will be contacting you to set up such an event. This is a picture showing all of the different appropriations bills. You'll see that 3 of the bills are not highlighted. Those are the bills that do not offer CDS accounts, but CDS is offered in separate accounts under agriculture, commerce, justice and science, energy and water development, financial services and general government, homeland security, interior, labor, HHS, Milcom VA, and THUD. I'll go through a few different accounts that are under a few of these bills just to give a lay of the land and sort of an idea of how these accounts are laid out. So under Commerce, Justice, and Science, first I want to point out that Senator Shaheen is a member of the Appropriations Committee, and she in fact chairs the subcommittee that drafts this bill. And so it really gives her a lot of influence into the projects that are funded under this bill. And we've been very, very successful funding a number of different projects, a wide array, supporting universities, supporting law enforcement, supporting other nonprofit organizations with their research activities or education activities. So there's quite a bit of opportunity. And I highly encourage folks to look carefully at the accounts under the Commerce, Justice, and Science bill. Some of these accounts, National Institute of Standards Technology, this is mostly for standards-based research. NIST construction is for building research facilities. NOAA account here is generally for climate, weather, or oceanic research, or sort of coastal research, those related fields. These 2 accounts under the Department of Justice are for law enforcement. One is for training and equipment. The other is for technology. And NASA is for science education, any sort of research that contributes to NASA's mission. Give some examples here of projects that have been funded under this account, or under this bill, I should say. Again, we've been very successful with a number of different law enforcement communications projects, and then the Seacoast Science Center renovation and program expansion. This was funding for $5 million to expand the museum space and for a new facility for their marine mammal rescue operations. Moving to interior and environment. There are a number of different accounts under here as well. One is water and wastewater infrastructure, which is sort of an analog to the SRF funds, or it in fact is an analog to the SRF funds that are for wastewater and drinking water. Sanitation facilities. This is an account that actually is not applicable for New Hampshire because it's specific to tribal lands. Historic preservation funds, this is an analog to the Save America's Treasures program. And so it would be available for projects that are eligible for Save America's Treasures. And state and private forestry, this is mostly for state and local governments for things like forest management, wildfire fighting, and community forestry activities. There's some specifics that we wanted to note for the Department of Interior for the water account. There's a minimum 20% cost share requirement for any state or local water infrastructure CDS grants. And the drinking water grants have to be either on the intended use plan for the state, or they have to be eligible to be included in for the state and local, for state revolving loan fund. Moving to transportation, housing, and urban development. This is a very, very popular bill for, it has a number of accounts that are popular. Most of all is economic development initiatives, which is a HUD account, Department of Housing and Urban Development. This account is analogous to community development block grant funds, and that funding is very flexible. There is no match requirement there. There are certain eligibility requirements as it relates to this account. So the impacted community would must meet a low moderate income percentage that is above 50%. Certain community, there's a really great tool that HUD offers, and it's included in our guidance. It's linked to it. It's basically a map tool that you can click in on your community, and it will tell you the low moderate income percentage for your community and whether or not it would be eligible for this account. Now, there are certain exceptions to that rule. Certain services are deemed to be eligible regardless of the community that they are situated in, and the guidance speaks to those sort of situations. And just some examples here. You can see 771,000 for housing for youth and young adults that was delivered for Waypoint for their work in Manchester to open up the first ever emergency shelter, dedicated permanent housing units for youth and young adults in New Hampshire. And then through the transportation accounts, which are typically sought after by local governments, and in this case, Manchester Boston Regional, we secured $9,350,000 for a cargo apron project that has been utilized by Amazon and has expanded quite a bit the cargo capacity for Manchester. Here's some helpful materials. This is just a screenshot of the first page of our guidance, and that, of course, is linked on our CDS portal. So obviously, we highly encourage folks to look through all of the guidance that's provided here, especially, of course, of the accounts that you are looking into that seem to fit the project that you are proposing. And on the other side over here is just the senator's disclosures of previously funded projects through the FY22 and FY23 process. We encourage folks to look through that mainly just to get an idea of projects in the past that have been funded. What do they look like? What is the funding amount that they were able to achieve? And just generally a good way of scoping your project and understanding what fits in what account. Then this is a screenshot of just our CDS portal. We're actually going to walk through this portal through in this presentation, but the website is here. This is where you can submit your proposal. And just want to get through some frequently asked questions. The deadline for submissions is Friday, March 22nd. If you have submitted your request to Representative Custer or Pappas, you are absolutely welcome to submit to this office as well. We all sort of communicate with one another and discuss the submissions to each of our offices. How do I know whether my project meets eligibility requirements? Well, that's what the guidance is for, to look through on our portal. I would also note that the guidance points to or links to a number of different resources on the regulations and guidelines that govern the accounts and the programs that these funds are delivered through. I submitted my CDS request. What happens now? Well, the Shaheen staff will review the information you provided, determine whether your request meets our internal and committee criteria for submission as a formal CDS request for Senator Shaheen, and we will notify you of our determination and keep you informed as the appropriations process moves forward. Generally, there's an iterative process upon submission where we might reach back and ask for additional information that the subcommittee is either asking for or the agency is asking for. Generally, this is just to ensure that there's eligibility under the account, and of course, as the CDS process moves forward, it goes to the subcommittee. The subcommittee makes determinations on what projects will be funded. So we always reach back out to folks who have been selected by the subcommittee, and then moves it forward to the full Senate and in appropriations legislation. And we keep folks informed every step of the way where their project is. If your project was not selected, we have a number of different, of course, pieces of legislation that were enacted into law that provided quite a bit of funding for a wide array of different projects. Of course, folks are familiar with the American Rescue Plan Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. And we have sort of guidebooks available for giving folks an idea of what the opportunities are under each of these bills and how it could potentially serve their projects. And these are some of those resources I mentioned. We have this guidebook on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We like to call it the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This is a really great guidebook here, DIY earmarks on just this process that we're discussing now. Federal energy resources for individuals and homeowners. This is great for smaller solar projects. Which typically, in FY22 and FY23, we were able to support such projects more easily through the energy and water accounts. However, in FY24, that sort of project eligibility was rescinded from the CDS process, and so this guidebook is really helpful for folks that are seeking federal assistance with those types of projects. And then building a clean energy economy. This is a great guidebook for the Inflation Reduction Act. Thanks. I will go through our portal, but I wanted to put this slide up here real quick. If folks have additional questions that we aren't able to get to in this webinar, please absolutely feel free to send a question to appropriations_Shaheen at shaheen.senate.gov. There's a little underscore there, or call our office at 202-224-2841. And I'm going to stop sharing just so I can switch screens real quick and go to our portal. So give me 1 second while I set that up. All right, 1 second. Okay, so folks should be able to see my screen, and I just want to use I'm going to sign it. This is the landing page, of course, before you sign in. I just want to show that it talks about the process, it talks about all the bills that we just went over that are available for CDS. It provides a link here to an example application, which basically is an application that was selected for funding in FY22. So it just gives a good idea of what an application looks like that was successful. This is our previous webinars, and there's our guidance down here. So you can click to all of this stuff without creating an account or logging in, for instance, if you want to look through the guidance. I'm just going to log into my dummy account that I set up earlier. So once you've created an account, which is just basic information, just like registering for any other website, you can log in, and you can see this is the landing screen. Once you've logged in, it has most of the same links that I just went over. You can start an application by naming it. So I'm going to name this one sample application 2. And you'll see this is, again, more of the same information. We really encourage folks to take a look at these resources. That's why we provide you the link so many times. We want to make sure that a lot of your questions, I'll say, can be answered by looking through these links, and particularly the guidance as well. So go to the application. This is where you'll submit information in 3 different steps. I just want to point out that there's also this checklist on the right-hand side here. This is where you will upload your letter of recommendation, 2 of them from third parties in the community that are supportive of the project. Affirmations and acknowledgements. This is just to acknowledge and certify that you will meet requirements under the CDS, under the Congress's CDS process, and other supporting information. If you have sort of deep dives, documents that provide a lot of budgetary information, or just more and more, the more information for our office, the better. So obviously, you're always welcome to upload that information through this portal here. Just want to click into the questionnaire just to go over a few of these fields very quickly, if it will allow me. Here we go. So project title, we like these to be in plain English and descriptive of the project. It doesn't need to be a sentence. It can be a simple, child care center construction project, something along those lines, but descriptive of the activity, and a short plain English title. Requesting entity, this should be the legal name of the entity, and it should match your sam.gov UEI registration. Location of requesting entity. Please make sure that you provide us with accurate point of contact information. We need to be able to reach out to, of course, the entity with additional questions, or when we eventually, if your project is funded, the agency needs to be able to reach out to set up the process from there. EIN, of course, is needed for identity purposes, and the subcommittees don't require us to provide the sam.gov UEI, but we like to have that just so we can provide that to the agency, so that the outreach is smoother and they know exactly who to contact and what entity they're dealing with. And then in this box, again, plain English is best in terms of just giving a very descriptive understanding to us in 2 or 3 sentences what this funding will be used for, what this project is. And problem issue statement, here you can justify what this project is for, get into the needs of the community, and how, of course, the project will satisfy those needs. Activity, in this box, we would like to see how the funds will be broken out in terms of the elements of your project, just giving a description of the specific activities being funded, project goals and results, economic and community impact, just more space for you to elaborate on sort of the impacts of this funding. We'd like to understand prior sources of federal funding, not specifically for this project, but just prior sources of funding for the entity, to understand the entity's experience with federal grants. And in this box, this is for additional sources of funding for the specific project you are proposing. Project estimated start date, and these are more or less just certifications about the process. And down here, we would like to know if you're submitting multiple requests, because we want to understand which projects you prioritize when you send to us. If you'd prefer us to fund one project and one is lower priority, we would like to understand that. And if you've submitted to other delegation members, we, of course, would want to understand that so that we can communicate with those offices. We're going to go to the next part of the questionnaire. This is where you will select the account information, the account that you're applying under. I want to make clear that even if you select an account to apply to, it's not the end-all be-all. If you happen to be incorrect, we will look at your project details, and we will take a look at all of the accounts that could be available for that project, and basically work with you and certainly notify you if we determine that a different account than the one you selected would actually be a better fit. And so that's the process that we go through. Obviously, it's always helpful to us if you landed on the correct account in the first place because you read the guidance carefully. But if not, don't worry. This is not the end of the end of the world if you accidentally picked the wrong account or if another account was actually more suitable. We work through that internally in our office. And then finally, just funding information. This is just project costs, minimum needed to initiate the project. And this cost breakdown, these specific fields are more for construction projects, capital projects. However, for projects for funding that's going to support more or less local programs, that you can use this other space to talk about how the funding will be broken out to support that program. And this is again talking about federal funding that's been provided to the entity, state and local funding, and other sources of funding for the project. And after that, you'll hit submit questionnaire. And we're back landed here. So I'm going to stop sharing and we will go into the question section.
Great. So we have quite a few questions, some of which have been answered already, but somebody is asking about, is this historic preservation fund in addition to Save America's Treasure, or should an eligible organization apply to either or?
So these opportunities are separate from the ordinary grant opportunities, but they match up in terms of the regulations that govern them. If you apply to CDS, you can also apply to Save America's Treasures. There may be an instance where if you receive CDS funding or if you receive Save America's Treasures, those may or may not be able to stack on top of one another, but they are separate opportunities just under the same account.
Thank you. Are you eligible for funding if you lease the property which you are seeking to improve? Do you have to own the property?
That's a question I don't know the answer to off the top of my head, but I'm happy to circle back with the subcommittee staff and we can get back to you.
Okay, so just
I would also imagine that it might depend on what specifically you're trying to do, right, Ted? I mean, I think if you're trying to do construction, that might be a more tricky question. Whereas if you're, for example, a nonprofit applying for funding that's not construction, but it's for programming that may be in a leased building, I think
Yeah.
for most accounts that would probably be fine.
Yeah, absolutely, you're correct. If it's a program that you're trying to run in a leased building, that certainly would be eligible.
Great. I think that you addressed this already, but have any of the 2024 projects seen any funds yet? I know the bills take a while to get approved.
So no CDS for FY24 have been funded. We are still working to actually enact the first 6 of 12 bills. We expect those first 6 bills to be enacted by the end of this week, and then the final 6, hopefully by March 22nd. Again, we will be in contact with all FY24 CDS awardees about the progress that we are able to make in the coming weeks.
If a project crosses state lines, New Hampshire and Vermont, for instance, does that lead to any additional problems or steps?
I would say that there should be sort of a base within New Hampshire of this project, like a headquarters of the entity. It's something that we can certainly talk about more after we receive the application, and perhaps that involves a conversation with the Vermont delegation. But ultimately, it should not preclude a project from funding. It's just something that we would have to look at.
Okay. When you're filling out costs info about construction, etc., do you want to know about the costs that have already been covered, such as pre-development costs, or only the costs you're asking to be covered?
If you can provide information on costs that are not that have already been covered and just note that they've already been covered, we'd like to have a full picture of a project, but we absolutely want to know how the funds themselves, the CDS funds, would be broken down. So as long as you make note of the fact that funding has already been covered and that you're not seeking that funding through this award, that's helpful.
Great. If an organization applied for a project in FY24 and have not been funded yet, should we apply again in FY25 just in case?
So I think that we are very optimistic that FY24 can go forward. Of course, I'm not gonna discourage anyone from applying, and we can certainly take a look if the worst case happens and we have to deal with the fact that FY24 was not enacted. However, like I said, we are very, very confident that we are moving forward with FY24 projects and that those will be funded in the very near future. However, if you want to be super safe about it and submit an FY25 CDS process, we are speaking internally about that eventuality if that ever did occur, and so certainly uh, I would actually say that sending a new application in is not necessary because we have your application materials from FY24. We'll likely reach out to those applicants and just simply get any updated information. So I would actually change my answer to say no need to submit an application.
Great. Is there a specific timeline for expending the funds?
This is going to vary from account to account. Typically, the obligation period is around 3 to 5 years, depending, and then expenditure period is slightly further out. So we like to see these projects being funded and being implemented within sort of a 1 to 2 year timeline, and that's sort of part of our analysis of these projects as they come in. But generally speaking, there is no hard deadline aside from the 5 year obligation period and the slightly further out expenditure period.
And this might be a good follow-up for that. It's if we receive funding this year, can we apply for additional funding in the next fiscal year? Like, can it be multi-years? And I'm assuming this person means for the same project, but they didn't specify.
So the purpose of CDS is not to provide multi-year funding for a single project. Of course, we want to support as many different projects and as many different entities in the state as possible. So we would not encourage folks to submit applications in consecutive years for the same project.
Can a new organization working on their nonprofit status apply with or through a nonprofit fiscal sponsor?
That is something that we will have to discuss with the subcommittee. It's not clear to me the answer right now, so we will certainly circle back with them.
Okay, great. I think this one was answered. It sounded like for a project that included acquiring land for a future water source, there was some plan it needed to fall within. Is that answered within some of the guidance?
If they could send that question to us written out in an email to our appropriations_Shaheen at shaheen.senate.gov email address, we are happy to look at that for them. I would encourage them, of course, to look at the guidance that would match their project.
This is a pretty straightforward one. For letters of recommendation, when they ask the entity for them, do they ask them to submit the letter or do we submit them on their behalf?
So the way the portal works is that the entity will be, when you click the submit letter, the entity, you will enter the email address of that entity. And Sarah, please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but you will enter the email address for that entity. Email will be sent to them, giving them the opportunity to upload the email. The letter of support on your behalf. So it will be the entity that the third party that's providing the letter of support that will ultimately be uploading that letter.
Okay.
If you have any difficulty with it, just send us an email. We can talk you through it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are transit and public transportation services non-capital, non-infrastructure eligible for funding?
If you read through the guidance under the THUD bill, it should be clear on that. If not, please do give a read through of that guidance and then ask that question to us through, I'll take a look at myself as well. But if you send that question to appropriations at Shaheen, or I'm sorry, our appropriations email, we will be happy to get back to you.
There's a question about healthcare workforce programs, whether those could be eligible given the challenges in hiring right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've done a number of healthcare workforce projects in the past, and so very much that is absolutely a priority for the senator. So I very much encourage folks to submit those.
Are proposals including a staff member for 2 years with plans to sustain with operating funds after those 2 years encouraged or discouraged? This organization is looking to engage a volunteer coordinator to help with growth.
Yeah, that's a project that would normally be eligible. And as long as there is understanding and commitment that this is not permanent supportive funding for that position, that this is a one-time allocation of funding and they have to find, of course, sustainable funding elsewhere afterward. As long as that's understood, we can certainly receive those applications.
Somebody's asking what committees Senator Shaheen sits on or chairs.
Quizzing me.
She's on Armed Services, Foreign Relations, Appropriations. She chairs the Commerce, Justice, Science Committee on Appropriations, and also the European Subcommittee on Foreign Relations. And she's also on the Senate Ethics Committee.
And she chairs the Senate Small Business Committee as well.
Committee, yep.
And for subcommittees, she is on energy and water. For appropriations, I should say. She's on energy and water. She chairs the Commerce, Justice, and Science Committee. She's on the Homeland Security Appropriations Committee. And I believe that sums up her subcommittees.
And labor, health, and education subcommittee. She's a member of that subcommittee as well. So that's
right.
Just, yeah.
That's the full
She
list.
can request projects in all subcommittees.
Yes.
Great. Some of these questions are the same questions different people asked. So, and I'm now going to the chat just to see if there's some that we've missed here.
Sure.
Does the portal allow for multiple individuals to access the application?
John, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, so the portal requires the applicant to create an account through the Senate's online application manager. That account's tied to a specific email and password. So I think if an applicant feels comfortable sharing that login information with other people, I think other people could access it, but it is tied to a specific email and password.
Okay. Does an application for historic preservation need to comply with the Save America's Treasures guidelines, or can an application be outside those guidelines?
It does need to comply. So if you're applying, the structure which you're applying for has to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places, or it won't be considered under that. Has to be listed. It can't be eligible for listing. It has to officially be listed. We ran into that last year.
Great. That's helpful information. There's some other questions about a couple of different questions about addresses for requesting entities. Should that be the organization address or the project address?
The addresses should be the organization's address, because this is mostly contact information.
Yeah. I think we've gotten to all of the questions.
I'll just add a couple other notes just here at the end. The two accounts under which Ted has alluded to, we received the most applications are THUD and Labor HHS. So those are very, very competitive. So if you're applying in those, just be aware that you're going to be competing with a number of folks. So as we've emphasized a number of times today, please review the guidance really closely. If there's another account that may fit what you're looking for, we encourage you to consider that. And again, if we review your application and determine it actually could be a better fit in another account, we will go ahead and move it and let you know that we've moved it into a different account. And just encourage folks to think about this as a one-time expense. So it's not something that can be applied for year after year. We discourage people from applying for the same project year after year. We're trying to expand our reach and try to benefit as many different organizations and municipalities as possible. So just please note that. And the other thing to note, people ask, when will we get the money? It's really unclear. We really can't give you a clear answer to that because it's subject to passage of the budget and appropriations bills, and that varies widely. As we've seen right now, we still do not have an FY24 budget completely passed. So If this is funding that you need imminently, this may not be the program for you. If it's something that you can be a little bit flexible with when the funding may actually come through, please definitely consider it. Look through the guidance, see if there's something that fits for you. But just know that this, once we review and the senator submits to the committee then reviews, and then the committee has to pass the bill out of committee. It has to be voted on theoretically in the full Senate, and it has to, be reviewed by the House. So it's a lengthy process to get through. So we really are not able to tell you when you may get this money, unfortunately. And then if you do get the money, I just want to emphasize that please do not spend anything until you have an executed agreement with the relevant agency who will be funding your project. We've had some folks who a bill got passed and they started to spend money on their project but didn't have an executed agreement with the agency. And in most agencies are unable to reimburse for things. So please be patient, ask us questions if your project gets selected before you spend any money. So that's really critical to know. Lastly, we will be doing some office hours, virtual office hours. The week of the 18th, we'll host probably a Zoom or Teams session for folks to be able to ask questions one-on-one with our staff. We'll hopefully include our team from the Commerce, Justice, Science, Appropriations staff, and also folks from the Small Business Committee to answer your questions about any specific questions you have about your application. And we are available at that email address anytime. So please do, we encourage you, if we didn't get your question today or we didn't answer it fully, please just send us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Great, thank you. So just as another reminder, we'll be sending out the recording. We'll be sending out the slides with all of the resources and the links that Ted has gone through for people to review those resources. There's the Appropriations at Shaheen email, which is the best place to address your questions. And then we'll work with the Senator's office as well to publicize the dates of those open office hours as well. So again, I think this has been, sort of like a very quick run through of a pretty important process for many of us, and we appreciate the time to go through that with us and the responsiveness in answering specific questions on this call and moving forward. I know that Senator Shaheen's office has been very successful in getting these spending opportunities that are for very important projects through in our state. And so we appreciate all the work that you do to help shepherd these along. I think that will wrap up the session for today. And again, thank you.
Thank you.